Hey, everybody. Welcome back to your Donna Drones podcast. I'm Dawn Zoldi, your host and the CEO of P3 Tech Consulting. And we are knee deep into a month dedicated to this theme of autonomy reimagined. And when you think of autonomy and you think of the different market sectors, the energy sector, in this crawl, walk, run scenario is literally flying. So, really excited to have with us here today Sean Guerre, the managing director at the Energy Drone and Robotics Coalition. So, welcome back, Sean.
Howdy, Don. Glad to be here. Excited to be with you today.
So, I say welcome back, everybody. If you haven't been following us, Sean is a three-peat guest. He's been on every single season on this show since its inception. And there's always something new happening in the energy sector. So it's always great to have you back, Sean. Always something going on. I know you were in episode 8 in 2020, one of our very first guests ever. And then also in 2021, episode 47. And here we are. I think we're at like 95. We're getting close to 100 here, Sean. So that's kind of exciting. So, Sean, why
Congrats.
don't you? Yeah, I know it's crazy. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself for those that don't know you?
Sure, happy to. I live in Houston, Texas, or as I like to call it, the Petro Metro. I've been the director for the Energy Drone Robotics Coalition for the last 7 years since we were founded. We're part of Innovate Energy, which covers emerging energy technology in a lot of different communities. And one of the things that I'm most excited about is having watched over the last 7 years the growth of drones and robotics, and of course, the data that's utilized from them in the energy areas. So dull, dirty, dangerous fits our model, and that's where we tend to be deploying. So it's exciting to see a lot of that going on. I really am just consistently curious about all things tech. I have a huge interest in it. Love to read, love to catch up with people, and I have two daughters who are with me here, and my wife in Houston, and we love to get outside as often as possible. That's one of the advantages of living in Houston. Great weather.
Well, that's awesome. And we're going to talk about your big event coming up here in Houston next month, Sean. But before we do, as I walk around and I talk to people, I say, are you interested in energy operations? And of course, the usual answer is yes. And I'll say, have you heard of the Energy Drone and Robotics Coalition? And not everybody has, which is shocking to me. I was so lucky early in my business. I have a good friend, Justin Martin. He was with the Energy Power Research Institute, EPRI, and he turned me on to you guys and your coalition. And once I saw everything you were doing, I became an immediate believer and follower. And so, why don't you tell everybody, Sean, a little bit about EDRC? Like, what is your mission? What do you exactly do?
Sure. So the thing about EDRC, Don, is we really are about helping people to connect and grow their programs for UAVs, robotics, and as far as their data that they're working with. So the workflows in order to make that data actionable. So what we mean by that is we're sharing best practices, we're sharing the trends that are affecting the industry. Use cases are a huge part, as well as the tech, right? What are the tech and services that are available and coming to market that are actually being deployed? So we like to say we're tactical, not technical, and that we basically try to help people on the asset owners and operator side to grow their programs and scale them, and make sure that they're operating in a safe and efficient manner. And then we're helping the younger tech companies who are coming into the market with new platforms and payloads and all kinds of, the great tech. How do they connect with those asset owners, and how do they help make sure that their products and services are getting noticed? So if you think about it, we're a hub, like a hub and spoke, right? So we have all these different channels that people interact with us: social media, whether it's our weekly newsletters, it's our online or live stream events, our live events, which are everything from small networking gatherings to meetups to major conference and summit. So all these different ways people interact, or they may download a benchmark report or a survey. So it's all these different try to basically be everywhere at every time. But you're absolutely right. All the time we run into people who've never heard of us. So we're always excited to be able to try to get the word out. Even though now we're almost 16,000 strong globally in 71 different countries who are part of our community, there's always folks coming along who haven't heard of us, and we like to get the word out to help them with their programs.
You know what I think is so unique, Sean, about what you do. I mean, you're very dialed into the specific energy market. And I've been to your events, and we're going to talk now about your seventh summit, which is coming up in June. Congratulations, by the way, 7 years running. You know, what I tell people is this is an event where literally the clients, the customers are walking the floor. You know, Chevron, BP, all of, you know, Dominion, all the big energy companies, anybody in critical infrastructure that has an energy component, they are there because they are early adopters of this technology. They want to see what's going on. They want to talk to the companies that are out there, you know, doing the work, the hard work every single day. So tell us a little bit about your seventh annual summit. You have a theme this year. What is it?
So our theme this year is from the stars to the seafloor. So everywhere that's uncrewed and autonomous, we're covering it. So that's one of the most exciting things about it. So for instance, you know, this year is brand new for our seventh year. You know, we have almost, when you count workshops plus tracks, we have 8 tracks, 3 workshops. So 11 different events taking place all over 3 days in June in Houston. So it's a tremendous amount of programming, way more than we've ever had before. But that's where the market is. That's what's so exciting about it. The market has evolved to where it's not just UAV operations, it's ground robotics, it's marine robotics, surface, subsea. Energy data ops has taken on its own life. Multiple sessions about digital twins and reality capture. You know, it's amazing to me to see how much we've grown, as well as some of the traditional areas that we know and love, BV loss, counter UAS. So there's so many things that we've still building on that have great new use cases nationwide. I mean, think about that, nationwide use cases on BV loss. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just going to be amazing to hear about automation and autonomy. So I get pretty geeked about it. It's a lot of great stuff going on all at one time. And I think that's one of the biggest changes for this 7th year is how much great information we have. And we're excited about it. And for instance, one of the workshops co-located is obviously La Tech Connect Energy Edition, which I know we'll talk about more, but that's getting into all the compliance and regulatory. These are areas that might have been one session or one roundtable in the past, and now we're seeing half a day to a day on all of them. So it's very exciting.
Well, it is. Can you, Sean, let's be specific for everybody out there. You know, where is it? When is it? And, you know, how can they find out about it? I know we're going to talk more about a lot of different things, but I want to make sure we plug that in here.
Sure. Yeah. It's coming up next month, June 12th through the 14th. It's at the Woodlands Waterway Marriott, which is really close to the major airport here in Houston. And basically it runs, that's a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So everybody can find information on it at edrcoalition.com, and it's right there as our main event coming up. So you can't miss it. And it gives you everything you need on all this type of information I'm talking about, is the co-located events, the agenda, the exhibitors, almost 100 different companies showcasing their technologies, live demos in our demo zone for both robotics and drones, as well as our learning lab on the expo floor, where we cover a lot of tech updates and use cases, on top of all that conference programming I was talking about as well.
No, I think it's awesome. And, you know, I mean, so many of us are still kind of digging out of our inboxes from AUVSI Exponential in Denver. You know, last week, I feel like in dog years, it's been at least 7 years since last week or whenever that was. It's like really a blur, honestly. But what I love about what you've done, and even, you know, what these other companies have done, it's not the same. It's not the same information. It's not the same crowd. It's all very complementary, but different. And so, can you give us a feel, especially for those that did go to Exponential? I feel like Exponential this year really did grow significantly. Like, I think after COVID, everybody's back. They're excited. I think this was the first really big year. And I know you and I have talked also about your event, and you've seen significant growth in what you expect from an attendance standpoint this year.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, there's, if you think about it, Don, there's a great selection of events. Some might say, you know, one a week or something like that when you look at it on a global basis. I'm sure all the places that you speak, right? I mean, it's consistent that there's a lot. And AUVSI is a wonderful ecosystem show, is what I call it, right? It's everything under one roof that you're able to see. And there's many other great events that are able to hit, I think, different areas for people in that ecosystem way, or the multi-commercial way. And as you mentioned earlier, for us, it's all about energy, industrial critical infrastructure, which is a pretty big sandbox. But we're looking at almost 1,500 people coming this year. And that's, like you mentioned, pretty much every major energy company on the planet is there. If it's a pipeline company or storage terminals or LNG or a power plant, nuclear, renewable, a multinational who's got, or a national oil company, you know, if they have operations that are being monitored, inspected, mapping, surveying with drones and robotics, they send a team there. So that's the exciting part, is that you have this really great connection at what I think is kind of an intimate event still, with 1,500 people and 100 exhibitors. It's still, I think, a very intimate environment. And it's really easy to be able to connect with one another and to be able to find out what's happening, what are the trends, what's going on. And as I mentioned, we are doing all that content at the tactical level, real world deployments. We don't get into a lot of policy areas. We don't get into a lot around some of the areas around government. You know, we get into what's actually being utilized, and you know, what's effective. And so that's a lot of what our content relates to. And I think that's why we were able to attract that audience.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of audience, Sean, great segue there to give a shout out to Desi Eckstein from Women in Drones. She is out there saying congratulations, 7 years. So very cool. And everybody, we are live, of course, as usual. So please drop a little note in the chat and say hello, tell us where you're from, ask Sean questions, because I'm telling you, if you haven't been to this event, you're missing out. This is one of the top ones on my list. I've really personally scaled back on my travel since late last fall, and I'm being very selective about where I go. And I'm absolutely going to Houston in June. So, Sean, I want to talk about some of the trends. I want to pivot for a second and talk about some of the trends you're seeing in the energy sector. I mean, you're talking multi-domain, you know, but like when you think about drones and robots, autonomous operations in this sector over the past year since we last talked, what changes have you seen?
Yeah, great question. And we love covering the trends. I mean, because it's obvious that that's something of interest for everyone. So let's take a look at a few things. One is with it that we see is around what we like to call interoperability, right? Robotics interoperability. And this is hitting on many levels. So as people have developed their programs, as we look at people who've expanded, you know, quite a bit, and look at where they're headed with their programs, they're flying sometimes hundreds of times a day, or
Yes.
they have operations, or they're working with multiple types of robotics, right? They have a certain amount. Let's look at a methane program, right? A methane detection quantification program for a major out in the Permian Basin. They could be using satellites. They could be using manned or crewed aircraft. They could be using UAS, and then ground sensors as well. You know, so you're looking at multiple levels of sensors pulling information, you know, and they've got to be able to interact and utilize that in a way that's cohesive to get that data and make it actionable, right? At the end of the day, that's their goal. So we see a ton going on around interoperability. How are they building their tech stacks? We've got a couple sessions that we're talking just about that, where they, because there's so many different platforms that they're using. Then you have to have, your software, right? What are you using to deploy, to track your fleet, to manage your fleet, and then to take that data and finish the rest of the workflow and potentially put that to many multiple internal stakeholders, and make that actionable, or external stakeholders. In the case of methane, it might be going to a regulatory body. So you're looking at, I think, quite a bit trend wise around interoperability and simplifying and making things work, across the enterprise. So for those who are scaling very, far, that's a big area. When we get back to data, that's the big number two for sure. So interoperability, number one, data, workflow, right? Where they were expecting the data lake, they got the data tsunami. How are they going to handle, all this data coming from all these sensors? Because it's no longer proof of concept or field trials. These aren't one flight, two flights, one robot, walking, or agile robot walking around a plant. These are dozens of these, and they're all capturing information. How do you get that information? How do you get it fast or real time? How do you deploy that information, possibly, once again, multiple stakeholders? So energy data ops and how you're utilizing that data is definitely a key second trend. And then the third one I'll say is really an interesting one, is we evolve from those way up here who are doing a ton on scaling and enterprise and hundreds of flights or hundreds of missions, daily. Then you get to the folks, you look at some of the surveys that have come out recently. There's a huge amount of folks who operate facilities and critical infrastructure who haven't deployed one robot, one drone. They're still learning how to build a program. They're still evolving. So I feel like that whole, chart we always see in tech, right? You've got your pioneers. They're out there, they're taking the arrows and they're hacking through the bushes, figuring out how to get it done. And then you have your fast followers, but the crowd, the majority, they're still coming. And that's the amazing thing. After 7 years, a lot of people don't realize trend wise, there's a huge growth that still will occur with drones and robotics in energy for companies who've never deployed at all. And those folks are coming. And that's, I think, where we're going to see a lot of growth about. And they want to learn how to build a program, how to deploy. They want to learn from those pioneers and fast followers so that they can also get out there in a safe and efficient manner and learn from their mistakes, frankly.
Well, it is a smart move, honestly, to maybe let some others that might have maybe even deeper wallets to take the risks up front and then check out their successes, learn from maybe some of the things that didn't go perfectly, and then launch. And so it's exciting to hear that, let's just call it, the mass of watchers are out there. They've been watching for 7 years, and now, like, some of them are ready to dip that, no pun intended, right, offshore energy, dip that toe in the water and make it happen. So that's really cool. So along those lines, Sean, we talked about these trends. What would you say then, given those trends, would be maybe some of the largest areas of opportunities in the drones and robotic arena in the energy sector?
Sure. So I think some of the opportunities are really still, around the big three: inspection, mapping, surveying. And what we're seeing is, for instance, in the renewable energy market, which is a very fast growing area globally, but definitely in North America, we're seeing that, for instance, there are some really large companies in this space who are utilizing drones and robotics almost exclusively for all their mapping and surveying for utility scale solar. So you're seeing that type of situation. They're using robots to build the solar, it's amazing.
Oh,
And then, of
wow.
course, maintain it. So, I mean, it's robotics start to finish. So people are really seeing an integrated approach on how they're able. So instead of just one use case or one thing that they can do, they're looking now at a huge area of being able to deploy from start to finish, end to end on the life cycle of these assets. So I think we're seeing some real growth there, and that's, I think, going to be another exciting area. Another one is kind of a crossover between methane detection, right? So you look at Colorado, where you are, right? Well, or where you live.
Well, actually, not today. I'm in a hotel room in Washington, D.C. right now.
Home base. But
Normally, I'm in.
Colorado, New Mexico, California, all have, very much active methane detection quantification rules. And on a national level, we're going to be seeing this, which is going to be covered multiple times during the conference coming up in June, as well as use cases showing what we're able to do with drones, robotics, and satellites for detection, measurement, quantification. So you look at that, right? So there's a perfect example of deploying robotics in order to meet a regulatory need, but also, kind of the carrot and the stick. There's a win. If you're able to take that gas and get it certified, then you're potentially going to get a higher price for that gas, natural gas, than you would otherwise. Or on the stick side, we're going to see some rules coming out from EPA that, like I say, they're at the state level, but you're also going to see them coming out from EPA later this year, where it's going to cost for, depending on how much methane, you are releasing over a certain amount, you're going to be paying a fine. And so the needs to have drones and robotics deployed in a safe and efficient manner to be able to measure and detect this, it's going to be huge. I mean, I think that market will be very large and growing rapidly. But I think that's another big win when we look at the energy market and how these can be deployed.
No, I agree, Sean. We had Dr. Jack Elston from Black Swift Technologies, a Boulder, Colorado company, on the show during AVSI, actually. And, we talked quite a bit about the methane sensor that they created for their S2 drone. And, just really a game changer. And you see so many companies out there now laser focused on this methane compliance issue because frankly, satellites and maybe the traditional technologies to track these things, they just don't cut it when you're talking about the level, the tactical, to use your word, the tactical level of fidelity and information you need to make, actionable, to gather that actionable intelligence for real world decision making. So I think that's unbelievable. So these are all the trends. These are kind of the different major use cases, if you will, that you're seeing in the energy sector. Looking in your crystal ball, what do you think is going to be the next wave? No pun intended, because a lot of these things are offshore. What do you think is going to be the next big thing? We've seen, like you said, the integrations, the interoperability, the explosion of beyond visual line of sight, and use cases for methane. What do you think on tap next?
Sure. So I think it's around the corner for everyone. The question is quite, how long is that corner, or how far is that horizon? But when we look at a combination of things, if we look at the tech, let's start there, and we look at where people have come along with detect and avoid, right? So in other words, you have DAA technology, you have BB loss technology, multiple people involved now in aerial management, right? So you basically have rules, regulations, and tech all kind of building up. You have use cases, right? We now have multiple versions of drone in a box, right?
True.
All of those things, technology-wise, are built around autonomy. That's what I'm talking about. Autonomy. That's the next big thing, I think, that we're going to see when you have a critical infrastructure asset, a refinery, a transmission line, a solar or wind farm. When you have anything in the critical infrastructure, it's somewhat stationary, right? I mean, it's there all the time. So at the end of the day, to have something that you could deploy autonomously in sometimes even great distances, right? For long linear, for pipelines or transmission lines, for a utility, for you to have the ability to autonomously be able to deploy, to run an inspection, and then have that return and immediately give you your data at the edge so that you're able to make that actionable. I think that's the next step that would be very exciting and make drones and robotics even more efficient. Having the ability, so if we're able to get over some of those interoperability hurdles and we're able to put together all these pieces, autonomy is, I think, the next big thing for the energy sector when it comes to drones and robots.
Well, and I think that's going to be a great sector to launch autonomy too, as you said, Sean, because some of these things are in remote locations. The air and ground risk is going to be lower. And so what we've seen, I think, is from the FAA, especially when you think about beyond visual line of sight and some of these autonomous operations like Percepto as one example of many. You're seeing these interesting waivers and approvals, some of which, as you mentioned earlier, are nationwide. Now, you intend to cover all of these topics in 8 different forums and tracks. Let's just quickly hit those. This again, back to your June event, and I think we have a cool picture from maybe last year. There we go. Always looks amazing. So, tell us a little bit about some of the forums and tracks you have going on.
Sure. So two of them, I think what we're looking at, Don, are kind of what we call our more traditional tracks, right? So UAV Drone Operations Forum, and the Robotics Inspection, Maintenance, and Repair Forum. These are kind of the traditional ones where we're talking about a lot of what's happening use case wise. So these are areas that have had deployments for a long period of time, but we've got new robotics, new tech that's being utilized in ways we haven't had before. So that's really the kind of things that we're covering in those areas. So I'll give you one, for instance. Not only is that solar robot that I mentioned that's actually building solar facilities, but we have robots now that do all the hoisting. So they lift everything, various floors or areas in a construction site or in a refinery or industrial facility. So we've got robots doing a whole lot more than they used to, and ultrasonic thickness testing, sandblasting. I mean, we've got robots doing all kinds of things in the industrial energy space. So that's really where we cover those areas. Then the energy data ops, I think we've touched on multiple times. So we're going to be talking about workflows, how to handle the information, make it actionable, whether that's AI enabled or, somebody who's using some sort of analysis there versus just humans, and for asset inspection management and integrity, or around some of the new areas around digital twins and how data visualization is being utilized there with reality capture. So that's a big area. Also touched on already methane strategies forum. Big area, big growth, lots of new use cases, research, trials. Most energy companies are using multiple options right now to try to figure out what makes the most sense. So what's the ROI? Well, how are they returning good data that they will be able to use once again for their internal stakeholders in compliance and regulation in order to, like you said, mitigate, some of these solutions can detect, but can they actually pinpoint what needs to be fixed? So you have to look at what package of solutions will be there. So that moves us into renewable energy robotics, which we touched on, wind, solar. How are we working on utility scale battery? What's being done in these areas that drones and robots are able to make an impact? And then we have a new working group around industrial drone delivery and autonomous cargo. Most of the information, as we know, is around medical, which is fantastic, right?
Right.
Happening with
or fun things like salads and pizzas.
Or retail, right? Yeah, I gotta have my taco, so fly it over. So we've got retail and we've got medical. So we've got two really good areas, but what we haven't seen as much is industrial, right? So moving tools and samples and things like that. But if you think about where everything's headed, when you look at down the road, right, air taxis and mobility, right, urban mobility, et cetera, you're going to move cargo first in a uncrewed autonomous manner before you're moving people. You're going to test everything with stuff before you get there. And so I think that's a very exciting future growth area, but we're starting to see some use cases, whether it's ship to shore, offshore, onshore in remote areas, moving things from point A to point B, where you don't have to send a truck. So it's safer, potentially more economical. So I think industrial drone delivery autonomous cargo is a very interesting area that we're going to see for the industrial space. I think they're going to be a big user for the middle mile. Then we have drone geoscience. This touches a lot of areas, but primarily it's using heavy lift drones with magnetometers. And they're going and looking for orphan or abandoned wells, abandoned pipelines. There's decades of infrastructure that have been built that wasn't always marked or easily known.
Oh, wow.
And these
That's kind of
structures
scary.
have been switched over multiple
Yeah.
times. So companies have, we have potentially gone out of business that, or been merged from the past. So these areas need to be detected. We need to know what's in the ground. And so we're starting to see drone geoscience take on a whole new area. So we've got multiple sessions going on around that. And then last but not least, marine robotics. So this is our surface and subsurface. And this isn't just offshore. We're also covering areas like cooling towers in power plants, or you may have a cooling reservoir of some sort around your power plant facility, or it may be some sort of liquid that's in a storage tank. So when we think about marine, or subsurface robotics, there's a lot going on and there's a lot of opportunity there. So we're covering that area as well. So there you go. There's 8 of them in a row that cover pretty much, like we say, from the stars to the seafloor with robotics.
That's unbelievable. And I want to shift to those co-located workshops because you've been in partnership with drone responders for a while now, and they're coming back again this year. Is that right?
They are, and we've really got a good focus this year, Dawn. What we try to do, because Drone Responders does such a wonderful job and works with multiple events in the public safety markets. There's quite a bit that they do. And really what we try to do is focus on the industrial, as you would imagine, industrial emergency management. So how are people handling things around critical infrastructure versus the public safety side? And so we find that there's a lot of information there and a lot of robotics and drones being utilized, whether that's wildfires, freeze or blizzards, tropical cyclones, industrial incidents. Unfortunately, we've had 2 in Texas over just the last couple months here in the greater Houston area, where there's been explosions, and we're able to deploy drones and robots in all of these kind of incidents much faster and earlier than you're able to use with humans, and it's safer. And so we're going to have several panels and sessions where we'll have utilities, oil and gas companies, as well as the responders sharing about how they're deploying drones and robotics in these areas.
Yeah, I mean, instant emergency management, especially in critical infrastructure, most people don't realize that the statistics vary, but I've seen as high as 90% of critical infrastructure in the United States is actually owned by the private sector. And so that public-private partnership, when there is a disaster, when there is an incident, and how to work together, I think having these conversations is so critical. So I'm a huge fan of drone responders too, and I'm glad they're coming back this year and focusing on this specific issue because sadly it's going to be an issue that continues to recur, right? And using drones and robots, as you said, dull, dirty, dangerous. A lot of these scenarios are very dangerous. So to be able to fly a drone and not put a human, at risk, I think is amazing. And I'm going to selfishly talk for a second about the LawTech Connect Energy Edition.
Please.
So yeah, here's the QR code. Everybody check it out because you can find the agenda there. So get your cameras and scan that for a second. And Sean, well, I'm happy to talk about it, but this is your show. So tell us, why did you partner with me on this?
Yeah, well, I think it was a real opportunity. We looked at it, Dawn. You launched this initially, right? LawTech Connect at AUVSI. Yep. So, yes. And looking at, obviously, AUVSI, once again, ecosystem, huge event that covers a large amount of area, particularly in the policy regulatory market. But when we looked at it, we were discussing, I think, when you and I talked about it, how there's a subset of really important information around BV loss, methane, maritime, counter UAS, and security of facilities, that we have these kind of big areas that were very much lending themselves to the compliance, regulatory, market, that there was a real opportunity to potentially do an energy edition of LawTech Connect that hits on these main themes and brings together some of the key stakeholders and subject matter experts to talk about how these areas are being worked on with drones, with robotics today, and where they're headed tomorrow. So I felt like that made a lot of sense. I thought it really was going to be a good addition for our community. And so we really enjoyed working with you on it. And you put together, in my opinion, a stellar set of speakers. I mean, there's a lot of speakers for half a day. And the fact that it's a, 4, I think, CLEs as well that you were able to get for certification. I think people are getting a lot for, a half-day workshop. So I'm excited about the opportunity for our audience to be able to hear this information and learn in these really fast-moving, groups that you have. I think 5 different sessions over the afternoon on Monday, June 12th.
Yeah. So everybody out there, if you want to come to this, it is on Monday, June 12th from noon to 5 p.m. I have free, underline the word free, VIP delegate passes to give away. I have a decent number of them. And so DM me, email me at dawn@P3 Tech Consulting if you want to join us. It includes not only my workshop, but also the Expo Hall Pass for EDRC's main event. And thanks to Unmanned Safety Institute, or USI, every one of those delegates is also going to get my drone law textbook for free. And we've got some sponsors lined up that are going to give us lunch. So really exciting. It keeps growing. And I hope some of you will join us. And Sean, I'm really honored to do this. I'm super excited. The methane panel, the energy BV loss, like you said, the security that's specific to energy. I think it's going to be really unique and exciting. So, Sean, we've been talking a lot about your event, but you guys do so much more. You mentioned your newsletter. You mentioned some of these other opportunities that you have, your website. Tell us a little bit about some of the other like events that you're doing and products that you have coming up. And I think we have a cool picture of a ground robot too. There we go.
There you go. Yeah, we definitely have, I think, a pretty active community that, not only obviously our digital channels, whether it's our weekly newsletter, Energy Drone Robotic News, that goes out each Tuesday, but we have a variety of different reports that we basically put together that, they're free of charge. So, I mean, it's not like a very expensive report that you have to download and spend hundreds or thousands of dollars, but it gives you a quick synopsis of what's happening. So if you want to know what are some of the key trends or what's going on in the programs for energy asset owner operators, we have a report on that. If you want to know what's happening, around BV loss in energy operations, we have a report on that. And we try to update these on a regular basis. So easily once a quarter, we're putting out a new report with updated information. The other thing is a lot of people like to visit our YouTube channel in order to see the sessions after they've happened. So whether they're live or live streamed, people are able to basically go and check those out at their leisure. So, I say it's just like, Netflix, right? But it's for drones and robots. So it's a great way for you to be able to pick up information there. And then we also do an annual benchmark survey. So every year we do this in the fourth quarter. We basically take a look at what projects have occurred over the last year. What are people using, for their tech stack? What are they deploying? What type of operations? And then what are they projecting that they're going to be doing in the next year? And so we find that to be very valuable for people to understand. And especially as we've seen drones and robotics and data deploy throughout enterprise, right? There's so many people now using these tools, using this technology, that, it used to be very much a R&D or innovation group, or they may have spun up a robotic center of excellence or UAV center of excellence, and it was fairly small. Some of these organizations now, Don, they're 300 plus people in their UAV center of excellence. The deployments are so vast, and the amount of people who are using them. And so it's important for those people to be able to get resources, to find use cases. And we try to make sure we're doing that online as well as in person. So beyond the summit, we're going to be doing our meetups. We call those Bots and Brews. So we bring together several groups who usually show, we usually break it down. Here's a couple things on trends. Here's some recent use cases from the energy asset owner operators. And here's 5 or 6 quick tech updates. These are new things that are out there that you may not have heard about in drones, robotics, or data. And then we network and hang out, and we have some brews. So we usually get 100 to 200 people on something like that. And we will have a version of that Tuesday evening on the show floor, Bots and Brews in Houston on June 13th during the summit. And then the next one will be after Labor Day. And then we're also going to be heading off to Calgary. So we're going to Calgary with Bots and Brews because we have so much going on up in that sector that's happening around drones and robotics and energy infrastructure. So we'll be going up there this fall. So we're looking forward to taking it on the road and building, more and more relationships live as we go around with Bots and Brews and do more meetups.
Wow, that's so cool. So you heard it here first. Bots and Brews is headed to Canada, everybody. So if you're up there in Calgary, you might want to check that out, put that on your calendar. Sean, we are getting, as usual, close to the end of our time. It always flies. It definitely always flies when I'm talking to you. So are there any other big announcements besides the Bots and Brews goes to Canada, your big event coming up that you want to cover before we close out the show?
No, from our standpoint, Don, same here. It always goes so quickly. We love talking to you and to your audience, and really appreciate the opportunity that you've given us each year to be able to communicate to folks about what we're doing at the Energy Drone Robotics Coalition. The biggest thing I like to get across to everyone and leave people with is however you want to interact with us, we're open to. Big tent theory. So if you're interested in getting more involved, if you want to share use cases, please reach out to me, okay? Absolutely. You can find me at edrcoalition.com. It's super easy to reach out, and we want to work with everyone in order to help the organization grow and help the industry rise to the next level. And for all of you who can make it, we'd love to see you all in Houston in a few weeks. So June 12th through the 14th. But thank you. Appreciate the opportunity, Don.
Awesome. And I think that's all she wrote, Sean, unless you have anything else.
Thanks so much.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We are out here.